Well, hi folks, this is Bill Gibbons, Crypto Hunter, coming to you with another video. This time our Peru report from September through to October. My sincere apologies for the lateness in bringing this to you, but it has been just very busy since I got back from Peru. Now, in order to keep the home front happy, what we did on this occasion was we made this sort of a touristy trip and combined it with a cryptozoological investigation. So what we did was first in Peru, in September, we flew to Lima, the capital city of Peru, which is a very interesting city. And we stayed in a hotel in a very nice area, which is known for tourism. Now, Peru, as you know, is a Spanish-speaking country. It's a language I don't speak, but in the major cities like Lima, you can get around pretty good because, in fact, most people there do speak English, even if it's rudimentary English. So have no fear there. It's a fascinating place to go, and people generally tend to be very friendly. So Peru is a country I highly recommend visiting, even if it is just for tourism. Now, in Peru, we spent a few days in the capital city just looking around, and we took a little local tour there. And then from there, we flew um, by Peruvian Airlines to a city called Cusco. Cusco, of course, is a very touristy place, but like most towns and cities in Peru, it's very historical. And in Cusco, there you get the hotels are very pretty. The town itself is very nice. That's when you start your tour. So from Cusco, now Cusco is actually quite high up. It's at 3,400 meters. It's in the Andes Mountains. And so once you're there for a few days, or more than 4 days, your body starts to produce more red blood cells for you to get used to that higher elevation. But it was a very pleasant place indeed to stay. Now, from Cusco, we traveled to a little town called Aguascalientes. Forgive my Spanish, it's non-existent. And from Aguascalientes, you take a train. And that train takes you all the way up to a sort of an embarkation point where you get a coach all the way up to Machu Picchu, this fabled Inca city built in the 15th century. Now, as you can see, there's some photographs here that I've taken. Now, the Machu Picchu is, of course, a place that everybody wants to visit when they go to Peru. It's well worth a visit. I love archaeology, I love history, and so Machu Picchu is an absolute must if you're going to Peru. But remember, they're now starting to reduce the number of tourists that are visiting Machu Picchu on a daily and annual basis. So if you want to go, try and go sooner rather than later. Everywhere you go, you have an English speaking guide, very helpful. And the guides are, of course, a wealth of knowledge. They take you to all the best places, and I must say I enjoyed the trip there. Took lots of photographs of Machu Picchu, as you can see here, even some you just saw of Cusco and Lima. Even the hotel, um, the view from our hotel bedroom window was even quite interesting. Um, but part of these tours includes a lot of these old Spanish and Catholic churches and cathedrals. I'm really not much interested in them. Apart from the historical and archaeological perspective, I have no other interest in them. But at Machu Picchu, which is at, I think it's quite high up, it's 2,430 meters up. I didn't realize that people tend to get altitude sickness about 12 to 24 hours after they've been to Machu Picchu. Now, there's a word of caution here. Even if you're young and fit, you can still get altitude sickness. Um, Back at the hotel, after we'd finished the trip at Machu Picchu, we descended down to the town of Aquiles Calientes for lunch. Very pleasant place again, very pretty town. Then we got the Inca Trail train back to a place called Ollantaytambo. I hope I'm just pronouncing these things correctly. And from there, it was a 2-hour coach ride back to our hotel in Cusco. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with an absolutely pounding headache. My stomach had turned to liquid. I felt extremely nauseous, and I realized, wow, altitude sickness got me. This is probably the most unflattering selfie I've ever taken. That was me in my hotel bed with an oxygen mask on. But I have to say, the hotels are they're prepared for this kind of thing with tourists. So I had about three 15-minute shots of oxygen throughout the day, cleared up my headache, got me back on my feet, and with the help of lots of cocoa tea, I was back on my feet again the next day. But please be aware that altitude sickness can be serious. So if you're going to visit Machu Picchu, that's something you should bear in mind. Now, once we'd done the tourist thing, and by the way, I'd like to give you a heads up on Peruvian Airlines. They were very pleasant. It's a local airline. The service was great, the flights were very pleasant, and they even give you a decent box in which you can get snacks and everything. So it was a pretty nice experience all round. Peruvian food is excellent. I really enjoyed it. I didn't sample the fried guinea pig. That's something I don't really want to, but I kept them as pets when I was younger, so I really don't want to eat them. Now, in one of the villages that they take you to, you see here, this is a kitchen area in somebody's home. And you can see here they have aborted fetuses of llamas hanging from the walls. The skulls that you can see are the skulls of ancestors. It's all rather grim, especially for somebody's kitchen, but apparently these things are supposed to bring you good luck. The next picture here you see are lots of guinea pigs. They breed them specifically for food. As far as I know, hardly anyone, if anyone, keeps guinea pigs for pets in Peru because they eat them just as we would eat chicken or beef or something. Even in Peru, we saw restaurants with fried guinea pig, but I just didn't have the heart to eat a guinea pig, so I stuck to chicken instead. At least I hope it was chicken. Now, once we were back in Lima, we just got a connecting flight straight through to Iquitos. Now, Iquitos is that city that's located on an island in the Amazon. Now, this is a big place. This is 800,000 people, surprisingly large for a city in the middle of nowhere. You cannot drive there. You have to get there either by boat. You can see here these narrow river boats full of hammocks, or you can fly by Peruvian Airlines. I suggest for convenience you fly, and it's a fascinating flight. In fact, we flew over the Amazon coming into Iquitos, but it was so dark I couldn't film, sadly. But once in Iquitos, we were met by John Mortimer and his wife Cindy. They are Americans. They had been in Iquitos, I'd say for the best part of 35 years. They are missionaries to that area. And they have done the most astonishing work among the people there. Now, whether or not you agree with missionaries and why they are there, or anywhere, the fact is that they are the best people to work through when you go to conduct an expedition of this kind. The reason for that is missionaries have spent, in some cases, decades in a particular area. And that means that they are familiar with one or more of the local languages. They know the region very well, especially very remote areas, and also they have a good understanding of the language, of the culture, of the people, and they have good contacts. So if you're doing expeditions of this nature, wherever you go, whether it's Africa, South America, or anywhere else, always work through the missionaries there. Even if you don't agree with why they're there, they are the very best people that you could work with. I promise you. Now, having been in Iquitos with John and Cindy, we had to rest up for a few days because of the altitude sickness, and I had a severe back injury at the time. I needed to get treatment for that in Iquitos. And once we were ready, we then loaded up our boat. You can see it here. Also with a smaller aluminum canoe, which we used for fishing. And once we loaded that up, there was myself, there was John, there was, so you can see here, young Jake, a very interesting young man from the United States who was there just on a visit and to kind of get a hang on John Mortimer's work there. But we had a couple of Indian companions, you can see here, and we headed up the Manatee River. It's called the Manatee River because, well, it was full of manatees at one time. However, they were almost hunted to extinction in the area, but I think now it's illegal to hunt them. So they're basically hoping that the manatees will make a comeback in that area. There was other things that we saw. You can see here this photograph I took of a river alligator. I got up pretty close to it. It was probably about 6 feet long, and I took this photograph. I didn't want to get too close to it, even though they are fish eaters. You know, they can still snap at you if you get too close. Also, some turtles. You can see the turtles here. And, so again, they swim around. Usually, as soon as they encounter a boat, they'll dive underwater because, again, the local people eat the turtles there. But it was interesting to visit a different location other than Africa. The one thing that concerned me here was the fact that there's still a lot of drug running going on in this area. So we were armed. You can see here we have a shotgun. In fact, we had a couple of shotguns. This is just one of them. And so everywhere we go on the river, we had to, or go in the forest, we had to take firearms with us. Here's myself and Andrew with a machete and a shotgun. And one of the things I found about the Amazon is that the temperature is constant, like 80 or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, constant. In Africa, it gets chilly at night in the Congo Basin, so you have to have your sleeping bag and wrap up and stay warm. But in the Amazon, you are sweating constantly. Your sweat pores are open, your kidneys are working overtime, and we just had difficulty trying to drink enough water to replace what we were losing in sweat. So that was one of the things that I found was very uncomfortable about the Amazon. Nevertheless, we did do a trek through the forest and we were trying to find a lake just off the river somewhere in the forest where the people are afraid of a monster or some creature that lives in the lake that the fishermen are very afraid of. Now the lake is, well, it's called Dangerous, and we'll have to wait for another time to visit it. But we nicknamed it Lake Fear because the fishermen are afraid to go near this lake because in the past, in this one jungle lake, they tell us that if you make a camp on the shore and you light a fire and everything else, and you sleep on the shore of the lake, you will disappear. But if you sleep, for example, in your canoe in the lake, you won't disappear. I don't know why that is. It's very strange. Now, John Mortimer, who's been deep in the Amazon, has told me that he's been to these lakes in the jungle several times that supposedly have monsters in them, and he's seen nothing. But on talking to the local Indians, he believes that these monsters, or mothers of the lake as they call them, could be very large alligators or outsized pythons. Now, we did have an opportunity to talk to a couple of the local Indian people that come from this area about some of the animals that they're aware of, some of the strange animals. So we took the opportunity to question them, including showing them various illustrations of different animals, like, for example, European animals, North American animals, African animals, and extinct South American animals. They didn't recognize any of those. But almost all of our dinosaur pictures were also rejected. But further up in the forest, about 700 miles north of Iquitos in the Peruvian Amazon, that's where we're getting reports of much stranger animals. For example, the large pterosaurs are seen way up in the north from time to time. Same with the sauropod, the long-necked, long-tailed, bulbous-bodied animals in the deep swamps and jungle lakes, but much further away. But again, we're getting reports of those that are known to the Indian people. One of the Indians that we had with us, a gentleman called David Angel, that's his anglicized name. He came with us on this trip, and he is from the central forest region of Peru. Now, he hadn't seen anything like pterosaurs or sauropods, but he did point out two animals he was familiar with. One is a large brown saber-toothed cat that sometimes is encountered in the forest, but is also known in the north, in the mountainous area. Also, the Sachomama, this gigantic snake-like creature that leaves a slime of trail on the jungle floor. Now, these are semi-aquatic, very snake-like. So the most interesting thing about these creatures is they tend to stay inactive for a very long time, so in burrows in the ground. In fact, during our walk through the forest, we encountered a large dark cave like this. But John and our two Indian companions in particular were very afraid, did not want to investigate it further, so I just took a quick snap and we moved on. They say that the Sachomama can live in these long dark caves. When it moves out of its caverns, they're so big and so slow, they tend to cause some sort of seismic activity, like an earthquake, as it moves. They also say that foliage and plants and bushes and trees tend to grow on the back of this animal. I don't believe that's the case, but what I do believe is that when the Sachomama moves, because it's so big and slow and sluggish, when it moves out of its cavern or its lair, it'll probably drag a lot of the foliage and the greenery along with it, giving the impression that this sort of thing grows on it. Now, you may have lichen or some other moss type growth that might attach itself to this creature. We don't know. But the animals move from caverns or layers in the land into these jungle lakes and sometimes even the river. One of these creatures was actually shot dead by some villagers further north of us, barely a few months ago. They measured it out at about 40 feet in length. And one of the most interesting things about the Sachomama is that it has these large eel-like appendages on both sides of the head. The one that was shot to the north of Iquitos had one of these eel-like appendages torn off, as if in a fight, perhaps with another Sachomama, perhaps with an anaconda. But the animals are real, they're known to the locals. And what we decided to do was we gave John Mortimer 10 of these waterproof disposable cameras. The reason for this is simple. When John heads back up the river to do his what they call the Congreso, these large Congress meetings they have with the church elders in the various villages, he is going to give out these cameras to trusted people that he knows personally, and we are going to arrange for a financial reward for them to take photographs of anything that they encounter that's unusual, whether it's a Sachomama, a saber-toothed cat, a giant outsized anaconda, such as this one here. This photograph is obviously photoshopped, but they are familiar with the anaconda, but especially these giant anacondas, something similar to this. And David Angel immediately pointed out that picture to us, saying, yes, he's seen them that big as he's been going up these very small remote rivers in the Peruvian Amazon. So we picked up a lot of very, very good reports, and we were very pleased with this trip, so it wasn't a complete washout. And I must say that it's encouraged us to return next year. So that's what we hope to do and go further up the river. And for David Angel, coming from an area called the Madre de Dios in the mid-central Peruvian Amazon, he now accompanies John Mortimer and his team further up into the north because he can speak 2 or 3 of the different languages, particularly one of the Indian languages. And that, of course, is very helpful, having that kind of translation. So again, great reports. Now, people have been asking me when I'm going to be returning to Cameroon. Well, this is my French colleague, Michel Ballot. He's from a place near Nice. And Michel goes to Cameroon practically every year, and he's been finding all kinds of things, especially these big tracks here. And I think not yet finished. We still have a lot of work to do there. I do believe, however, that technology will help us enormously. Not just these disposable cameras, but things like game cameras that we can leave in specific locations for 3 or 4 months at a time. They, as you know, probably take still images as well as short 15-minute bursts or 30-minute bursts of video. And so we're going to have those with long life batteries available to take back to the Amazon and to equatorial Africa with us. Also things like drones, the latest drones, as you can see here, compact, lightweight. You can now fit them with extra long life batteries. You can keep them in the air for 30 minutes or so. Again, of tremendous value in doing aerial search. It's even in the world of cryptozoology. And also the latest generation sonar, like the fish finding sonar here. 2D screens, highly detailed, definitely the kind of thing that we're going to need on expeditions regardless of where we go. Now, for some reason, and I don't know how, a short video clip got on the channel. My son Andrew was test firing a rifle that we have. This is called the Mosin Nagant. Fires 762 rounds, bolt action. If you saw the movie Enemies at the Gate with, about a World War II Russian sniper, it shows them using the Mosin Nagant, which is a great rifle. It's very accurate, has a very good killing range, and it's an old rifle, but nevertheless a very dependable rifle. And so we decided to just go up to the range and test fire the Mosin Nagant. And I have an old British 303 that I use. We're not hunters, we're target shooters. And let me just clarify a point here. I am not a hunter. I am a target shooter. When it comes to hunting, you can go and hunt deer if you like, but I strongly disagree with things like trophy hunting. Whether you're shooting, whether it's bear culls, cougar culls, or whether you're going to Africa to kill things like lions, hippos, even giraffe, I find that absolutely repugnant. And I do not believe that trophy hunting is something that really should be allowed, because you're just having people with too much money and high-powered rifles going to Africa to shoot beautiful animals for no other reason than to have a trophy. And I strongly disagree with that. Some people do argue that, well, trophy hunting brings money into Africa, especially to villages and little communities that host the trophy hunters themselves. Now, while I can understand that, surely there are other ways we can find for villages and communities in Africa to survive without having to engage in trophy hunting. But again, that doesn't mean to say that when we go to Africa or the Amazon, we're going to start shooting things. In my personal experience, if you encounter an angry animal, whether it's an elephant, whether it's a hippo, a gorilla, whatever the case might be, all you really have to do, or even a bear here in Canada, if you put a shot into the ground, they'll turn around and run away. So the only reason we would be armed going back to these locations would be strictly for self-defense. In the case of the Amazon, it was really for the drug runners that we encounter in the rivers there from time to time. In Africa, it'd be elephant poachers or wildlife. But we believe in self-defense, but we don't believe in trophy hunting. And we may not even take the same rifle that Andrew was shooting. But again, if you haven't seen Enemy at the Gates, watch that movie, even clips of it here on YouTube, and you'll see Jude Law, the actor, who played a crack Russian sniper. And the rifle that we were using in the movie was the Mosin Nagant. Great old rifle. Well, that's it for now, folks. Thank you again for joining us here on the channel. If you have subscribed, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so and help us out. Again, Happy New Year, Happy Christmas to everybody. It's December 26th. I know it's a little late to say Happy Christmas, but I hope that 2018 turns out to be a fantastic year for all of us. So until then, last video of the year, this is Bill Gibbons saying thank you so much for joining me here again at Crypto Hunt. And we'll be bringing you up to date with cryptozoology news from around the world starting in January 2018, as well as latest expedition news from myself and Michelle below. Until then, it's me, Bill Gibbons, saying thank you for your support, thank you for your interest, have a fantastic new year, and we will see you again soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.